Okay, we're back in the continuation of Billy being shown how the device inside the Plejaren ship can actually read the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and Billy's just demonstrated that he understands it, and that she's quite surprised that he can really understand it as well as he does. And she says, yeah, we can, through this device, listen to the conscious mind and the subconscious mind of any individual that we think about. And the subconscious mind contains information about your future, because the future that you are creating for yourself is being created all the time in your subconscious mind, and your conscious mind is not aware of it. Now, that's an important point for all of us. We're always hearing how we should create our own future and take responsibility for ourselves. Well, apparently we're doing it all the time anyway without even our own awareness. That our subconscious mind is at all times creating a future. And by creating a future, what I mean is that it's making plans for what it wants to do, what you want to do. Your subconscious mind is making plans for the next few days on what it wants to do, and your conscious mind is not even aware of it yet. Your conscious mind kind of gets the news later on when it's time to do something, so to speak, or whenever your conscious mind actually turns to the subconscious and tries to tune into it. But here we have a device that can tune into your subconscious mind and then read what that subconscious mind is thinking of doing in the future. Now, how far ahead in this future, I don't know, but here the device is reading Hans's mind, because in 2 days' time Hans was planning on calling Billy, and on the screen suddenly they see Hans picking up the telephone to call Billy to arrange a meeting to come over and talk about doing these lectures and so forth. So Billy's very surprised that on the screen he can actually see the future, see Hans doing something in the future, and all this is being read through Hans's subconscious. He doesn't even know yet that in 2 days he's going to suddenly decide to call Billy to do this. But his subconscious mind, 2 days previous to that event, has already decided that he wants to do it. Well, Billy's a little surprised, says, gee, with this device you guys can know pretty much anything. And she says, yeah, we can. We have to be very careful so we don't misuse this knowledge, but it gives us the ability to pretty much look into the thoughts, feelings, and future about anyone that we want to. And Billy says, well, could I give it a try? And she says, sure, go ahead. You seem to understand the symbols pretty well. What do you want to do? So he puts his he puts his hand on the world ball, he called it in the notes. It's called a world ball. I don't know if it looked like the earth or just a round ball. And she says, well, think about whoever you want to see on the screen. And he does. And he says, well, the person I'm going to see on here, he says, I'm going to be thinking about General Francisco Franco of Spain. And he begins to think about that. And she says, well, okay, now this button right here next to the ball, push the button. And he pushes this button, or depresses this little whatever it is there. And on the screen suddenly, he's seeing these symbols which represent the subconscious mind of Francisco Franco. And then he switches something, and you can see the conscious mind of Francisco. And Billy's reading the symbols which depict the information from Franco's conscious mind, and he says, wow, look at this. This fella is scared to death. I mean, he's really in fear. What's he afraid of? And he reads some more symbols that are moving across the screen, and he says, I understand now. This poor devil is afraid of dying. He's afraid to death. He's going to die. Matter of fact, he's terrified. He's trembling. And if any of you will remember back in that time period that General Francisco Franco was dying at that time, and ultimately did die about a month after that. Well, Billy switches it over to the subconscious, and he's kind of surprised. And he says, well, look, this is entirely different. The subconscious mind is not afraid. The subconscious mind is not terrified at all. And he kind of stops for a second. He says, I don't get it. The conscious mind is terrified, afraid of death, and the subconscious mind is very peaceful. What's going on? And Semyasi says, well, that's very simple. The subconscious mind is directly connected to creation, and the subconscious mind knows that death is no terror at all. And Billy kind of has a realization. He says, oh, of course, I understand. The subconscious mind, which is directly hooked to your spiritual abilities, which is directly hooked to creation all the time, is aware that death is no great horror, that it's simply a step into a new evolution, you might call it. It's the continuation of an evolution. It's just a step forward in your growth. So it wouldn't be terrified at all. But his subconscious mind, he says, look in here, I see this, that the subconscious mind knows that he's going to have a heart attack soon. And he starts to give the date, and Semjase stops him. She says, don't say the date out loud, because we don't want it in your notes. I don't want you to say the date out loud. And he says, why? And she says, well, we don't call the dates out on events like this, future dates on people, because they don't really want to affect events. They don't want it in his notes where people would be reading about it. Now, a heart attack probably wouldn't be something that would have any effect anyway, but it's a general trend or general way of doing things with them, that they don't reveal things about the future exactly because they don't want to have effect on them. They apparently have got to a point technically where they can see the future events of people and of nations and of planets, but they don't like to take responsibility for events happening. So they're very careful, morally careful, about not changing any of those events by actually, putting information out about them, which would cause people to react differently than they normally would. So Billy doesn't call the date out, but right after the contact, he goes home and he writes this letter down. It's October 20th, and he writes a letter down with the date and everything in it and sends it to Hans and tells Hans not to open the letter till November 20th, which Hans does. He gets the letter, he receives the letter and opens it up, and in it is an explanation all about this device and the contact that Billy has just had and all the information about Franco and that he will die on November 20th. And so they were able to see the date actually exactly right on the machine, and they have this device then that reads our subconscious. Okay, on a couple of tapes back, I mentioned that Semjase was explaining to Billy about the occurrences in the Bermuda Triangle. And she explained exactly what was causing this, that it was the radiation from a couple of very large suns that were putting a small rip in time in certain areas on the Earth. And because of that, ships would disappear and slip off into different time realms. Billy had more questions about that later on, and she says, well, we will have an opportunity very soon that we will be able to show you exactly how that works. Well, apparently they had reason to go into another dimension, and after they explained to Billy exactly what dimensions are at one particular time, an opportunity did come up for him to be shown exactly what's in the Bermuda Triangle dimensions door. So she picked Billy up, and she was in her ship, and she explained to them that to remember the drawing that she had made for him that showed the cyclone-shaped swirl, which is the shape of what a dimensions door actually looks like and how they get into it. And they flew into the area where the Bermuda Triangle is, and they proceeded to head into the dimensions door. She says they're not going to be going in exactly to the same dimension where these people slip off into. Normally when you go through a dimensions door without any equipment or apparatus to protect you, then you would just slide right into a future Earth situation. But that's not exactly where they were going to go. By the way, the one that the ships and people and so forth have slipped into seems to be far in the Earth future, someplace we don't know exactly how far. But they're not going into that particular dimensions frame. They're going to go in controlled more with instruments and the radiation shields that protect the ship. So they're going into a different, it's the same dimension door, but they seem to have control of where they go. And they're going into a certain area where there's been an accident where there are 3 Earths, all in one dimension. Now here we only have one Earth in our dimension that we live in, so it'd be a little unusual to go into a dimension where there are 3 Earths. There is a future Earth, 470 years in our future, and there is a primitive or prehistoric Earth, and then there's one existing like in the very, very primitive stages, just in the gas ball sort of era, I guess you'd call it. So they proceed to go into the dimension, and Billy's looking on the screens inside of the ship, and up ahead of him